Good morning. I'm Cody Godwin, filling in for Taylor Wilson. Today is Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, a House committee releases a slew of documents about disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. Plus, the Supreme Court overrules a lower court on ICE's use of racial profiling. And the parents of depressed teens are turning to an untested and potentially risky therapy to provide relief. A House committee released a slew of documents about disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, including a birthday book with messages purported to be from President Donald Trump, former President Bill Clinton, and Harvard Law professor emeritus Alan Dershowitz, among others. Democrats on the committee had released the Trump note that he and the White House have denied the president wrote or signed. The letter posted on social media shows Trump's purported message to Epstein inside the outline of a woman's body, with the president's signature mimicking pubic hair. The letter, which was first reported by the Wall Street Journal in July, ends with the message, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Another page in the full book the House Oversight and Reform Committee released features a picture of Epstein with another man and a woman whose face is blacked out, holding an oversized check for $22,500, signed DJ Trump. The book is filled with lewd pictures with many faces blacked out and messages both handwritten and typed from well-wishers for Epstein's 50th birthday. The book lists notable figures such as Clinton and Dershowitz as contributors and friends, but neither has been charged in association with Epstein. For more on this story, check out the link in today's show notes. This past June, you'll probably recall the protests that gripped downtown Los Angeles as immigration raids and deportations surged at the direction of President Donald Trump. One class action lawsuit filed in the wake of these protests by a group of Latinos argued that agents were using racial profiling illegally in determining who ICE could stop for questioning. A lower court had ruled in favor of the plaintiffs back in July, but the Supreme Court overruled that decision yesterday in yet another big win for the Trump administration. Here to help me break down the impact of the ruling, my colleague Dana Taylor sat down with USA Today Supreme Court correspondent Maureen Groppe.
Maureen, thanks for hopping on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So exactly what did the Supreme Court rule on yesterday?
So the court blocked a lower court's ruling that federal agents need a reasonable suspicion that the person they're questioning is in the country illegally. That federal judge said that the government can't rely solely on the person's ethnicity, what language they speak, whether they're at a particular location, such as a pickup site for day laborers, or what type of work that they're doing when they're being questioned about their immigration status.
The challengers say this boils down to racial profiling and Fourth Amendment rights. How big of a constitutional question does this ruling raise?
Well, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who's one of the court's three liberal justices who disagreed with the decision, said it's a very big deal. She said we should not live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. And she also had this line, rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost, I dissent.
The Justice Department argues that roughly 10% of some California populations may be undocumented. How does this statistic shape the government's enforcement strategy?
They say that's why the Los Angeles area is a top enforcement priority. And in a region where a significant share of residents may be undocumented, the Justice Department said you would expect that a quote, reasonable suspicion, unquote, would include the factors that the judge said can't be used.
Maureen, is the Trump administration targeting California because of politics? It's not exactly a secret that he and Governor Newsom don't see eye to eye.
Well, the administration says it's put a lot of emphasis on the Los Angeles area because of the significant share of the population there that they say is not in the country illegally.
How does this decision fit into the Trump administration's broader immigration crackdown outside of California?
Well, you would expect that the administration would now feel free to use these same tactics elsewhere if they want to.
Maureen, do the challengers have a realistic path to prevail once this case is fully litigated?
So you're right that this case isn't fully litigated. What the court was ruling on is what the administration can do while this case is working its way through the court system. And one of the factors that the court considers in deciding whether it can is whether they think that the administration is likely to ultimately win. So this interim ruling is an indication that the majority thinks that the administration did nothing wrong and probably will ultimately win if this challenge continues, all the way back to the Supreme Court. But they could still change their minds after they consider the issue more fully.
All right, Maureen Grabe covers the Supreme Court for USA Today. Thanks for being on The Excerpt, Maureen.
Hey, thanks for having me.
After much speculation and teasing by President Donald Trump, the Department of Homeland Security said it's launching Operation Midway Blitz, a new initiative targeting undocumented immigrants who commit crimes across Chicago and Illinois. The DHS said in a social media post yesterday, the operation is in honor of Katie Abraham, a 20-year-old woman from one of Chicago's northwest suburbs who was killed in a hit-and-run crash in January by Julio Cucol Bull, a 29-year-old Guatemalan national who's in the United States illegally. DHS said the Immigration and Customs Enforcement operation will target people in the country illegally who commit crimes and flocked to Chicago and Illinois. Hundreds of Homeland Security officials are expected to operate from a naval base outside Chicago. Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement the operation will go after the worst of the worst, accusing Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and other local politicians for releasing gang members, rapists, kidnappers, and drug traffickers that put lives at risk. President Donald Trump announced upcoming guidance from the Department of Education protecting prayer in public schools during a speech at his Religious Liberty Commission's hearing yesterday.
As president, I will always defend our nation's glorious heritage, and we will protect the Judeo-Christian principles of our founding, and we will protect them with vigor. We have to bring back religion in America, bring it back stronger than ever before as our country grows stronger and stronger.
The hearing, held at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., marked the Commission's second public meeting and had a theme of religious liberty in public education. Trump has long vowed to bring religion back to the nation, both on the campaign trail and so far during his second term. He went on to allege that students are indoctrinated with anti-religious propaganda in public schools before announcing the new Department of Education guidance. It was not immediately clear what the guidance would entail. Parents of teens who are struggling with depression are quietly turning to a controversial and unproven remedy, ketamine therapy. What are the risks for young people, and what does the research say? For more on that, my colleague Dana Taylor spoke with USA Today wellness reporter Rachel Hale.
Rachel, thanks for joining me on The Excerpt.
Thanks for having me.
First, how does ketamine work? Why has it proven successful in the treatment of some forms of depression?
Yeah, experts explained to me that ketamine works by stimulating the brain's resilience mechanisms. The chemical targets a different system in the brain than standard antidepressants, which triggers the release of glutamate, which then stimulates the growth of new synapses between brain cells. The plasticity of the brain, its ability to learn, adapt, and respond, is compromised during depression. And experts said that ketamine can have a positive effect on that kind of plasticity, which might make other forms of intervention work better after the therapy is complete.
Rachel, your story highlights the desperate struggles of depressed teens and their families. Why have some turned to ketamine as a last resort? And is this treatment legal for use in teens?
Ketamine therapy is generally only advised for people who are extremely treatment resistant, so who have tried 2 or more forms of antidepressants or other medications, and usually have tried talk therapy or other forms of intervention as well. So for that reason, the majority of ketamine users are going to be at least in their late 20s, early 30s, if not older. So these teens who are turning to it, or people in their young 20s, it really is as a last resort as ketamine therapy has started to grow in popularity. In terms of the legality, the only FDA-approved form of ketamine therapy is an S-ketamine nasal spray, so kind of like a cousin of ketamine therapy. But the majority of ketamine therapy is administered through an IV, and neither of those forms are approved for people under 18. So the result is that the field is kind of unregulated. Insurance rarely covers the IV ketamine therapy, so users are often paying out of pocket The majority of ketamine therapy that's administered is legal, but known as off-label use because it's not regulated under the FDA if it's that IV type.
Where are we in terms of research into the effects of ketamine treatment on teenage depression?
A lot of the research surrounding teenagers is new, and experts say that they're hoping to have more in the future because it's really soon to be able to tell as much about the effects of ketamine therapy on young adults. But from what experts know, the detrimental effect on the brain of growing up with severe depression would be worse than the potential risks, if administered correctly, of ketamine therapy. There was a case study done through the Yale Child Study Center in 2017 that found depressive symptoms dramatically reduced for young people aged 13 to 17 with treatment-resistant depression when they used an infusion of the therapy. It found that within 24 hours, those effects started. So if it lines up with what we know about how ketamine therapy works on adults with treatment-resistant depression, it should have those same effects in teens. The part that's kind of the unknown is that the young brain is not fully developed until 25.
Rachel, you spoke with a young woman named Lucy who first tried the treatment at the age of 16. Despite it helping with her battle against OCD and depression, she now wonders if she was too young for the treatment. What did she share with you?
Yeah, I spoke with both Lucy and her mom, Jacinta, and they told me that what Lucy was experiencing on a day-to-day basis with her OCD and depression, it was so extreme that any of the potential side effects of ketamine therapy, they thought wouldn't have been as bad as what her day-to-day was. The type of OCD and depression she was struggling with was to the point where she had dropped out of school because her contamination anxiety was so severe about hearing people breathe in the classroom or even at home, not wanting to come into the kitchen because she had anxiety about smells or different types of food that was there. And she found that a lot of these symptoms became more manageable with a combination of ketamine therapy and other interventions. And so for them and some of the other families who are going through this decision-making process, they felt that the side effects paled in comparison to the status quo.
You also spoke with John Crystal, the chair of psychiatry at Yale School of Medicine. What did he share with you regarding the risks involved with ketamine treatment?
The therapy's most common short-term side effects are dizziness and nausea, but in extreme cases, long-term heavy use of ketamine can be associated with memory problems, gastrointestinal issues, and urinary tract infections. Some of the other risks that come up with ketamine or that are popularly mentioned online, like bladder issues, are generally more associated with abusing ketamine in a recreational sense. However, there's less research about ketamine therapy's effect on young adults. And as such, Crystal told me that it should still be a last resort for teens because the potential with any substance like that of getting addicted if you abuse it, those addiction issues are even more prevalent in young people under 25.
Rachel Hale is a wellness reporter for USA Today. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. If you use a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Cody Godwin, filling in for Taylor Wilson. Dana Taylor will be in tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.